In the glittering ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel, a moment of truth is about to unfold. When a successful young executive publicly dismisses his own mother as just a maid during his wedding ceremony, he thinks he's simply maintaining his carefully crafted image of success. He couldn't be more wrong. Eleanor Chen isn't just another invisible worker in a blue uniform. For 28 years, she's been harboring a secret that could shatter the foundations of her son's perfectly curated world. This isn't just another wedding story. This is about how a room full of social elites learned that true worth isn't measured by designer labels or bank accounts. When Eleanor reaches into her worn leather bag, no one realizes they're about to witness a revelation that will leave every guest questioning everything they thought they knew about success, sacrifice, and status. What could one simple maid possibly reveal that would silence a room of 200 elite guests? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 28 years earlier, Eleanor Chen stood at the entrance of the Grand Plaza Hotel, her heart pounding beneath her crisp new uniform. The morning sun caught the brass nameplate pinned to her chest. Eleanor, housekeeping staff. At 23, with barely enough English to fill out her application, form and a baby growing inside her, she had learned her first American lesson. Sometimes, invisibility could be a gift. Remember, Mrs. Zhang, the head housekeeper, had told her during orientation, guests don't want to see us working. We are like air, necessary but unseen. Eleanor had nodded, though something in her chest tightened at those words. She pressed, her hand against her still flat stomach, thinking of the child within. Would her baby also learn to be invisible? The marble floors gleamed beneath her sensible shoes as she pushed her cleaning cart through the lobby. Each guest who passed looked through her as if she were made of glass. But Eleanor saw everything. The way the stockbrokers gathered in the business center every morning, their fingers flying over keyboards as they tracked the market's opening bell. She noticed how the wealthy guests handled their money, overheard their investment talks, observed their strategies. During her lunch breaks, while other maids chatted in the basement break room, Eleanor sat in a quiet corner with her notebook. She recorded numbers, patterns, conversations she'd overheard. At night, in her tiny studio apartment, she pored over financial magazines from the library, translating each article word by word with her Chinese-English dictionary. Her first investment was tiny, just $50 from her tips, placed in a penny stock she'd heard the brokers discussing. When it doubled 3 weeks later, Eleanor felt something she hadn't experienced since arriving in America. Hope. Not just for survival, but for something more. By the time her son Michael was born, Eleanor had turned her initial $50 into $500. She worked every shift she could, trading sleep for study hours. While Michael napped in the hotel's daycare center, a benefit she'd negotiated in lieu of a raise, Eleanor built her knowledge. Every cleaned room meant more overheard wisdom from the financial elite. Every toilet scrubbed was another lesson in how wealth worked in America. "You're different," Mrs. Zhang told her one day, catching Eleanor scribbling in her notebook. "Most new girls, they just want to learn enough English to find a husband or a better job. But you're planning something bigger, aren't you?" Eleanor just smiled, tucking her notebook away. Her baby boy was 3 months old now, beginning to focus his eyes on the world around him. When she held him at night, she whispered her dreams into his tiny ear, not in English, but in her mother tongue. "You will never know hunger," she promised. "You will never know shame. Everything I learn, everything I earn, it's all for you." She didn't know then that her greatest challenge wouldn't be building wealth, but rather maintaining the delicate balance between success and secrecy. As she donned her uniform each morning, Eleanor was already learning that in America, people's assumptions could be either chains or shields. She chose to make them her shield, letting their dismissive glances bounce off her as she built her empire one overheard conversation at a time. That first employee badge, with its grainy photo and simple title, housekeeping staff, became more than just a work permit. It was her key to an invisible world, where the wealthy spoke freely in front of those they considered beneath notice. Eleanor kept it long after she could have thrown it away. A reminder of where she started and how far she planned to go. By the time Michael turned 7, Eleanor's investment portfolio had grown thick enough to require its own filing cabinet, carefully locked and hidden in her bedroom closet. While other maids collected trinkets and tips, she accumulated stocks, bonds, and eventually, small real estate holdings. Each statement that arrived in her post office box told the same story. Her gamble was paying off. The morning shift at the Grand Plaza always started at 5 a.m. Eleanor would wake at 4, check her investments on a second-hand computer she'd bought at a garage sale, and then walk through the pre-dawn streets to the hotel's service entrance. Michael slept peacefully at home, watched over by Mrs. Liu from next door, an arrangement that cost Eleanor an extra hour's wage each day but kept her son safe and comfortable. "Mama, why do you wear that?" Michael asked one morning, catching her before she left, his small fingers touching the rough fabric of her uniform. His English was perfect, unmarked by the accent that still colored her own speech. "Jenny's mom wears pretty suits to work." Eleanor smoothed his hair, buying time, to choose her words carefully. "This is my job, son. It's honest work. But you could do something else, right?" Even at 7, he was sharp enough to sense the difference between their life and those of his schoolmates. "Mrs. Thompson says I'm really smart. She says I could be president someday." "You can be anything you want," Eleanor agreed, her heart catching at the hope in his voice. In her locked filing cabinet, stock certificates and property deeds proved she could already afford to quit, to find work more fitting for a woman who owned shares in half the companies whose executives she cleaned up after. But something held her back. Instinct, perhaps, or the wisdom learned from years of watching the wealthy destroy themselves with flash and show. The first time Michael lied about her profession, Eleanor was measuring coffee grounds into the hotel's massive urns. In the basement kitchen, a school tour group had unexpectedly stopped at the Grand Plaza, and she heard his voice before she saw him. "That's not my mom," he said quickly to his friend, turning his face away as Eleanor emerged with fresh coffee. "My mom's a business consultant. She travels a lot." Eleanor kept her face neutral, years of practice helping her mask the pain that lanced through her chest. She poured coffee steadily, invisibly, letting her son's shame wash over her like so many other indignities she'd endured. That evening, she took out her portfolio statements, running her fingers over the growing numbers. The documents showed her truth. She owned more shares in the hotel's parent company than most of its executives. But as she watched Michael grow, excelling in the private school her hidden wealth afforded, she began to understand that her success might become his burden. His friends lived in houses with manicured lawns and vacationed in Europe. Their mothers chaired charity committees and hosted tea parties. No matter how many zeros appeared in her secret accounts, Eleanor's uniform marked her, and by extension, Michael, as different. She considered revealing everything then, showing him the truth behind their modest lifestyle. The statement folders had grown so thick they barely fit in the filing cabinet now. One particularly successful tech investment had tripled in value that year alone. She could explain how she'd built their future while scrubbing toilets and changing sheets, how every overheard conversation in the business center had become a gold nugget in her mind. But when she saw how easily he moved among his wealthy classmates, how naturally he adopted their mannerisms and expectations, she held her tongue. Let him build his own path, she thought. Let him believe what makes his life easier. Her sacrifice wasn't just the years of physical labor. It was this too, this willing acceptance of his growing shame. The investment statements, tucked away in their locked cabinet, became her private comfort. They were proof that every dismissed glance, every moment of being looked through instead of at, every instance of her son's emerging embarrassment, served a greater purpose. They were her silent testimony to a truth she alone knew. Sometimes, the most powerful person in the room was the one nobody bothered to see. The acceptance letter from Westbrook Academy arrived on a Tuesday. Cream-colored paper with an embossed golden crest. Eleanor held it with hands that had just finished an evening shift, still smelling faintly of cleaning products. Dear Mr. Michael Chen, it read, we are pleased to offer you admission to our prestigious institution. Prestigious indeed, and expensive. The tuition costs listed made most of the hotel maids gasp when Eleanor mentioned the school, though she pretended she was only dreaming about it. In reality, she'd already transferred the funds from one of her better-performing investment accounts. Michael's education would not be a dream. It would be his stepping stone. Mom, do you have to come to the orientation? Michael asked, fidgeting with his new blazer. At 13, he'd grown lankier, his face losing its childhood softness. Can't they just mail you the papers? Eleanor folded laundry in their modest apartment, buying time. The school requires a parent's presence, son. But you'll be wearing, He gestured vaguely at her uniform hanging on the door. Pressed and ready for tomorrow's shift. I can change clothes, she offered, though they both knew it wouldn't matter. The other parents would be arriving in luxury cars, carrying designer bags, wearing success like a familiar perfume. Even in her best outfit, Eleanor knew she wouldn't fit in. Never mind, Michael mumbled. I'll tell them you're sick. The orientation day dawned bright and clear. Eleanor called in sick to her shift, something she'd never done before, and wore her one good dress, a navy blue number bought on sale. 3 years ago, she sat in the back of the auditorium, watching Michael slide into a seat near the front, carefully distant from her. Welcome to Westbrook Academy, the headmaster announced, his voice carrying authority earned through generations of educating America's elite. Your children are now part of a legacy of excellence. Eleanor listened intently, memorizing every detail about curriculum and expectations. Around her, other parents tapped notes into expensive phones or whispered to each other about summer, homes, and club memberships. A woman to her left wore a watch that could have paid for a semester's tuition. During the tour, she heard snippets of Michael's conversation with a group of boys ahead of her. My mom's actually in real estate, he was saying, the lie smooth on his tongue. She's really busy today. This is my aunt. Eleanor kept her face carefully blank, a skill perfected through years of hotel service. That evening, she took out the acceptance letter again, running her fingers over the embossed crest. She placed it carefully in a folder marked Michael's Education, alongside the receipts for his paid-in-full tuition. The folder was thick with evidence of her love, every check, every transfer, every sacrifice documented in pristine detail. As Michael progressed through Westbrook, the distance between them grew with each passing semester. He joined the debate team, excelled in economics class, and developed the polished manner of his peers. Eleanor watched from the shadows of parents' nights and school events, pretending not to notice when he introduced her as a family friend or distant relative. She kept working at the Grand Plaza, though now she owned enough shares in various companies to retire comfortably. The uniform became her armor, the role of invisible maid, a carefully maintained facade. In the mornings, she would sometimes clean the hotel rooms of her own business competitors, listening as they discussed deals she had secret interests in. Your son's performance is exceptional, Michael's economics teacher told her during one parent-teacher conference. He has a natural understanding of market forces and wealth management. You must be very proud. Eleanor nodded, thinking of the investment lessons she'd whispered to him as a baby, the principles of compound interest she'd taught him disguised as bedtime stories. He works very hard, she said simply. In his junior year, Michael landed a prestigious summer internship at an investment bank. The irony wasn't lost on Eleanor. It was one of the first companies she'd invested in, back when she was still learning to decode the financial jargon she overheard in the hotel's business center. I did it all on my own, he boasted to his friends, within Eleanor's earshot as she restocked towels in the hotel gym where they worked out. They said my application was the best they'd ever seen from a high school student. Eleanor continued her work, invisible as always, her hands folding towels while her mind calculated the growing cost of her son's dreams, not in dollars, which she had in abundance, but in truth and connection. The acceptance letter, preserved in its folder, had become both a symbol of achievement and a marker of loss, recording the moment when Michael's path began to diverge from her own. The day Eleanor secretly purchased controlling shares in the Grand Plaza Hotel chain, she cleaned its penthouse suite as usual. Her hands, which had just electronically signed documents worth millions, now folded Egyptian cotton sheets with practiced efficiency. The property deed was safely stored in her lawyer's office. Another invisible person who'd learned that true power often wore disguises. "Such a shame," she overheard one executive tell another as she dusted the business center computers. "Some anonymous investor is buying up our shares. The board's worried about a hostile takeover." Eleanor hid her smile behind her cleaning cloth. In her 20 years of service, she'd learned that the wealthy rarely notice the help, which made her the perfect hidden buyer. Her broker, carefully chosen for his discretion, had structured the purchases through a maze of shell companies. To the business world, she was simply Chen Holdings, a mysterious entity that seemed to materialize money out of thin air. "Did you hear about the Chen Group?" The conversations followed her through the hotel corridors. "They're buying up prime real estate all over the city. Nobody knows who's behind it." Meanwhile, Michael flourished at Yale, his calls home growing shorter and less frequent. "Can't talk long, Mom," he'd say. "Big project due? Important networking event? You understand, right?" She did understand, perhaps more than he knew. Every diminishing connection was another price paid for his success. His social media posts showed him at yacht parties and charity galas, his arm around gorgeous girls from good families, his smile bright and confident. He was becoming exactly what she'd hoped, a young man who moved effortlessly in high society. During Parents' Weekend, Eleanor made excuses not to come. "The hotel is very busy," she told him. "Perhaps next time." She didn't mention that she was actually in New Haven that weekend, attending a closed-door board meeting in a building she partially owned, discussing investment strategies with people who would have been shocked to learn that their cleaning lady was one of their major shareholders. Her empire grew in silence and shadow. While other business moguls splashed their success across magazines and social media, Eleanor built her fortune like she cleaned hotel rooms, methodically, thoroughly, and without drawing attention. The property deed to the Grand Plaza was, joined by others, office buildings, retail spaces, residential developments. Each acquisition was carefully structured to maintain her anonymity. One day, as she was changing trash bags in the hotel's executive offices, she overheard a conversation that made her pause. "This Chen Holdings. They've acquired another block of downtown property. My analysis suggests it's all connected to that same mysterious investor. We're talking billions in assets now, all controlled by someone who never shows their face. Any leads on who it might be? Some think it's a Chinese investment group. Others say it's old money playing games. Hell, for all we know, it could be the cleaning lady." They laughed, and Eleanor allowed herself a small smile as she continued her work. If they only knew how right their joke was. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with a notification from her broker. Another successful acquisition, another piece of her invisible empire falling into place. That evening, she received a text from Michael. "Got the summer associate position at Goldman. They're really impressed with my understanding of market dynamics. Guess all those business books paid off." Eleanor stared at the message, remembering the countless nights she'd spent studying those same principles, applying them in secret while maintaining her humble facade. Her son had learned his lessons from textbooks and professors. She'd learned hers from years of silent observation and calculated risk. The property deed to the Grand Plaza, now just one document in her vast portfolio, remained her favorite reminder of life's ironies. Every day she cleaned the building she owned, served coffee to executives who unknowingly worked for her, and watched her son build a career on principles she'd mastered years ago in secret. "Congratulations, son," she texted back. "I'm very proud." She added a simple heart emoji, then returned to her work, invisible as ever, while her empire continued to grow in the shadows. The magazine's spread in the Financial Times lay open on Eleanor's small kitchen table. "Rising stars under 30, meet the next generation of Wall Street." Michael's face smiled up at her, confident and polished in his bespoke suit. The article praised his meteoric rise at Goldman Sachs, his innovative investment strategies, his natural instinct for market dynamics. Born to a single mother who worked as a housekeeper, the article noted in passing, Chen's rise exemplifies the American dream. One sentence to summarize her decades of sacrifice and secret success. Eleanor traced her finger over the words, remembering all the unwritten chapters behind that simple line. She was cleaning the hotel's executive lounge when she first saw Victoria Blackwell. The young woman's Hermes bag probably cost more than a maid's monthly salary, but it was her sharp intelligence that caught Eleanor's attention. As Eleanor silently refreshed the coffee service, she overheard Victoria dissecting a complex merger deal with surgical precision. "Michael's been talking about you," Victoria said later that week, catching Eleanor in the corridor. "He mentioned his mother works here." Her tone was friendly, but carried that slight edge of superiority that Eleanor had learned to recognize over the years. "I'm Victoria. Michael and I have been dating for a few months now." Eleanor bowed slightly, playing her role perfectly. "Very nice to meet you, miss. Michael is good boy." Victoria's smile tightened at Eleanor's deliberately broken English. "Yes. He's done remarkably well for himself, hasn't he? It must make you so proud, seeing him rise above his circumstances." That evening, Eleanor received an alert from her broker. Another financial publication had run a story speculating about the mysterious Chen holdings. Unknown investor controls billions, the shadow empire reshaping Manhattan real estate. The article attempted to trace her investments, marveling at the strategic brilliance behind each acquisition. If they only knew that their mysterious billionaire had spent that morning scrubbing toilets and changing sheets. Michael's relationship with Victoria progressed quickly. She came from the right family, had the right connections, shared his ambition. Eleanor watched from the margins of their life together, serving drinks at the hotel events they attended, invisible as always. "You'll never believe what happened today," Michael told Victoria one evening in the hotel bar, not noticing his mother discreetly clearing glasses nearby. "The Chen Holdings Group just acquired another major property downtown. Everyone's scrambling to figure out who's behind it. Some people think it might be connected to Chinese state money." Victoria leaned forward, interested. "My father's firm has been tracking them for years. The investment patterns are brilliant. Whoever's behind it understands the market at a level most analysts can't comprehend. I've studied their moves," Michael said proudly. "Actually used them as a case study in my last presentation to the board. The way they structure their acquisitions, always staying just under the radar. It's genius." Eleanor moved silently between tables, her heart swelling. With complex emotions, her son was analyzing her work, admiring her strategies, all while having no idea that his case study was his own mother's creation. The magazine article about the mysterious real estate mogul had become something of a legend in financial circles. Speculation about Chen Holdings' true identity fueled countless theories, none coming close to the truth. Eleanor kept a copy of the article in her growing collection of artifacts, another piece of evidence that would one day help tell her story. When Michael's promotion to youngest vice president in his firm's history was announced, Eleanor sent a simple congratulatory text. He replied hours later, "Thanks, Mom. Pretty busy celebrating with Victoria and the team. Talk soon." That night, Eleanor sat in her modest apartment, surrounded by documents that proved she was one of the wealthiest property owners in Manhattan. Outside her window, the lights of the Grand Plaza Hotel, her hotel, illuminated the darkness. Somewhere in that glittering city, her son was celebrating his success, never suspecting that his mother's empire dwarfed his own achievements. She pulled out her phone and checked her investment portfolio one last time before bed. Tomorrow, she would wake up early, put on her uniform, and continue building her invisible empire, one cleaned room at a time. The wedding invitation arrived in Eleanor's mailbox on a Tuesday morning. Cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering announced the union of Michael Chen and Victoria Blackwell at the Grand Plaza Hotel. Under the RSVP section, Eleanor's name was listed as Mrs. Chen, family friend. She held the invitation in hands that had aged from decades of labor, studying the careful wording that erased her role as mother of the groom. In the corner of her small living room, her maid's uniform hung pressed and ready for tomorrow's shift. The irony wasn't lost on her. They would be celebrating in her hotel, in her ballroom, all while treating her as an afterthought. "We need to discuss the seating arrangements," Victoria said one afternoon, cornering Eleanor as she restocked the hotel's executive lounge. "Michael suggested putting you at the family table, but—" She paused, adjusting her diamond engagement ring. "My parents feel it might be more comfortable for everyone if you sat with the hotel staff. You understand, don't you?" Eleanor kept her face carefully neutral, the same expression she'd worn through countless indignities. "Yes, Miss Victoria, I understand." "Oh, good," Victoria brightened. "I knew you'd be reasonable. And about the ceremony. We think it's best if you don't walk down the aisle with the family. We'll have you enter with the other staff before the guests arrive. It's really for the best. You wouldn't want to embarrass Michael on his big day, would you?" Each word landed like a carefully aimed arrow, but Eleanor had years of practice at appearing unmoved. She nodded, continuing to arrange coffee cups with methodical precision. Meanwhile, in her mind, she reviewed the morning's investment reports. Her latest acquisition had just doubled the size of her real estate portfolio. The wedding planning continued around her like an elaborate theater production where she played an ever-diminishing role. Eleanor watched as Victoria's mother commandeered the Grand Plaza's finest suite, a suite that Eleanor technically owned, to host planning meetings with the city's most expensive wedding coordinator. "The mother of the groom is unavailable," she overheard Victoria explaining to the coordinator. "But we have everything handled. Michael's done so well for himself, rising above his humble beginnings. It's really quite inspiring." The invitation, with its careful erasure of her maternal role, joined Eleanor's growing collection of documents that told the true story. She placed it in a folder alongside the property deeds, investment portfolios, and newspaper articles about the mysterious Chen Holdings empire. Each piece of paper was a chapter in a story waiting to be told. One evening, as she cleaned the hotel's business center, she overheard Michael on a video call with his future in-laws. "Trust me, I've handled the situation with my mother," he was saying. "She knows her place. There won't be any embarrassing scenes." Eleanor's hands stilled on the keyboard she was wiping. "Knows her place." The words echoed in her mind as she thought about the empire she'd built, the wealth she'd accumulated, all while playing the role of the humble maid. She had given Michael everything: an education, opportunities, a chance at the high society life he clearly craved. And in return, he had given her invisibility. That night, she sat at her small kitchen table, the wedding invitation propped against a vase of grocery store flowers. Her phone buzzed with investment alerts. More properties acquired, more wealth accumulated in secret. The distance between her two lives had never felt greater. The next morning, she pressed her uniform with extra care, making sure every crease was perfect. She was, after all, going to be part of the wedding of the year, even if her own son preferred to pretend she was just another member of the hotel staff. As she pinned on her name tag, Eleanor allowed herself a small smile. Soon enough, they would all learn what decades of being invisible had bought her. The night of the rehearsal dinner, Eleanor stood in front of her closet mirror, holding up her worn hotel uniform. For 28 years, this simple blue dress had been her armor, her disguise, her path to invisible success. Tonight would be the last time she would wear it, though only she knew that yet. "The cleaning staff doesn't need to attend the rehearsal," Victoria's mother had announced earlier that day, her voice carrying across the hotel lobby. "Just make sure everything is spotless for tomorrow." But Michael had mumbled something about appearances, about avoiding questions, and so here was Eleanor, preparing to attend her son's rehearsal dinner as a servant rather than a mother. She smoothed the fabric of her uniform, thinking about the other outfit carefully packed in her bag, the one she would wear tomorrow when everything changed. The Grand Plaza's smaller ballroom glowed with warm light as the rehearsal dinner. Guests arrived. Eleanor moved silently between tables, refilling water glasses, straightening place cards, playing her role one final time. Her hotel uniform, pressed and pristine, felt heavier than usual. Michael's done remarkably well considering his background, She overheard Victoria's father telling another guest. You'd never guess his mother is… well… He gestured vaguely in Eleanor's direction as she cleared a plate. It's all about rising above your circumstances, Victoria added, loud enough for Eleanor to hear. Michael's practically self-made. He never let his humble beginnings hold him back. Eleanor's hands remained steady as she worked, even as the words cut deep. In her locker downstairs lay her worn leather bag, containing not just tomorrow's revelation, but also her old hotel ID badge from her first day of work. She'd kept it all these years, a reminder of where she started and how far she'd come. The rehearsal proceeded like a well-choreographed dance of wealth and social status. Eleanor watched as Michael moved confidently through the crowd, every inch the successful young executive. He barely glanced in her direction even when she served his table. Mom, he caught her briefly in a service corridor, his voice low. Tomorrow during the ceremony, just stay in the background, okay? Victoria's family has some really important guests coming. I can't have… well, you know. Eleanor looked at her son, really looked at him, seeing the boy who once held her hand with pride, now transformed into a man ashamed of his own mother. Yes, Michael, I understand. Great, he smiled, already turning away. Oh, and make sure the other staff knows to be extra attentive to the Blackwell family's tables tomorrow. As he walked away, Eleanor touched the worn fabric of her uniform. Her last connection to the life she'd pretended to live for so long. In less than 24 hours, this costume would become a relic, a symbol of her long masquerade. Later that night, alone in the employee locker room, Eleanor changed out of her uniform for the second to last time. She folded it carefully, reverently, remembering all the moments it had witnessed. The overheard conversations that led to million-dollar investments, the dismissed glances that allowed her to build an empire in secret, the years of watching her son grow increasingly ashamed of her presence. She placed her old ID badge in her bag alongside the documents she'd bring tomorrow. The photo on it showed a younger Eleanor, newly arrived in America, eyes bright with determination. That woman could never have imagined how far her path would lead, or how painful the journey would become. Mrs. Chen? The night manager's voice interrupted her thoughts. The Blackwells asked if you could come in early tomorrow to make sure. Everything is perfect for the ceremony. Eleanor smiled softly. Yes, of course. Everything will be exactly as it should be tomorrow. She closed her locker, hearing the echo of its metal door like a chapter ending. Tomorrow, she would arrive early. As requested, she would don this uniform one final time. And then, when the moment was right, she would show them all what decades of being invisible had achieved. Dawn broke over Manhattan as Eleanor sat at her small kitchen table, a cup of green tea growing cold beside her. In front of her lay a treasured photograph, Michael at 6 months old, sleeping peacefully in her arms during a rare break between hotel shifts. She was wearing her uniform in the picture, dark circles under her eyes, but her smile radiated pure joy. My beautiful boy, she whispered in Mandarin, touching the photo's worn edges. Back then, she'd dreamed of the day she could finally show him everything she'd built, imagining his pride when he understood the empire his mother had created while cleaning rooms and serving coffee. The reality had turned out differently. Her phone buzzed with a message from her broker. Unprecedented market activity around Chen Holdings. Rumors of a major revelation coming. Should we issue a statement? No. Statement needed? She typed back. Everything will be clear by this evening. Eleanor opened her worn leather bag one last time to verify its contents. The documents were arranged chronologically. Her original hotel employee ID, the first investment statements, property deeds, bank records, and finally, the master document that proved her ownership of the Grand Plaza Hotel itself. Each paper represented a step on her long journey from immigrant housekeeper to secret billionaire. She dressed methodically in her uniform, knowing it would be for the last time. The familiar fabric felt different today, less like armor and more like a cocoon about to be shed. In her bedroom closet, behind the row of practical work clothes, hung the outfit she would change into later, a hand-tailored silk suit that cost more than a year's salary for the role she'd been playing. The Early morning air was crisp as Eleanor walked to the hotel, her leather bag clutched close. Staff members nodded respectfully. She was, after all, their most senior housekeeper. If only they knew they'd been bowing to their owner all along. "Eleanor! Thank goodness you're here early." Victoria's mother bustled over, already immaculate, in her designer dress. "There's so much to do. The flowers in the bridal suite need rearranging, and Victoria specifically requested you handle it personally. She says you're the only one who gets things right." Eleanor nodded demurely. "Yes, Mrs. Blackwell. I take care." "Such a good attitude," Mrs. Blackwell commented to her companion as Eleanor walked away. "You hardly find that kind of servitude anymore. No wonder Michael kept her around all these years." In the bridal suite, Eleanor arranged roses worth thousands of dollars, each stem placed with the precision she'd once used to build her financial empire. Through the open door, she could hear Victoria's bridesmaids arriving, their excited chatter, mixing with the pop of champagne corks. "Can you believe Michael's mother is actually working the wedding?" one voice carried clearly. "I mean, I know she's staff here, but still, it's so awkward." "Victoria says it's better this way," another replied. "Keeps her busy and out of the way." Can you imagine having someone like that at the family table? It would ruin the whole aesthetic. Eleanor's hands never faltered as she positioned the last rose. On her phone, another message flashed. Major financial networks picking up buzz about Chen Holdings. Something big expected today. She touched the old photograph in her pocket, her lucky charm, her reminder of simpler times. The image of baby Michael, innocent and untouched by social pretense, strengthened her resolve. Perhaps after today, after the truth was revealed, they could finally bridge the chasm that wealth and shame had created between them. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Mom?" Michael stood there, handsome in his morning suit, looking uncertain. "I just wanted to... thank you for handling everything today. For making it easier for everyone." Eleanor looked at her son, really looked at him, wondering if she could catch a glimpse of that baby from the photograph. "You are welcome, Michael. I hope today brings many surprises." He smiled, relieved that she was playing her part, so, "Well, great. Well, I should go. The photographer wants some shots of me getting ready with Victoria's brothers." He paused at the door. "Oh, and Mom? The staff uniforms for the ceremony are in the basement. Dark blue, no name tags. We want everything to look elegant." As he left, Eleanor touched her leather bag, feeling the weight of the documents inside. In a few hours, elegance would have a very different meaning in the Grand Plaza Hotel. The old photograph in her pocket reminded her of everything she'd sacrificed to reach this moment, and everything she hoped to reclaim before the day was done. The Grand Plaza's ballroom transformed into a cathedral of wealth and privilege. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across white silk draperies, while arrangements of white roses and orchids created living sculptures at the end of each row. Eleanor watched from the service entrance as guests arrived. CEOs, political figures, old money families who'd never known the sting of being invisible. The wedding program, elegant in its letterpress design, lay abandoned on a side table. Eleanor picked it up, noting how the careful wording edited her out of existence. Michael Chen, son of... followed by a conspicuous blank space, as if he had sprung fully formed from the world of high finance. Places, everyone. The wedding coordinator's voice cut through the pre-ceremony buzz. "Staff needs to be completely out of sight before the guests are seated. Mrs. Chen, please make sure the service corridors are clear." Eleanor moved through the back passages of her hotel, directing other staff members with quiet authority. Each step echoed with the weight of her leather bag, now safely stored in her office with its explosive contents. Soon, very soon, from her position behind a discreet panel, Eleanor watched the ceremony unfold like an expertly choreographed performance. Victoria floated down the aisle in a dress that cost more than Eleanor's first year's salary at the hotel. Michael beamed at his bride, every inch the successful young executive. The Blackwells sat in the front row, radiating satisfaction at their perfectly curated union. Marriage, the officiant intoned, is about family, about connections that run Deeper than surface appearances? Eleanor's hands tightened on her serving tray. Through the service window, she could see her son's face, composed and confident. No trace of the little boy who once proudly introduced her to his kindergarten class. Now he barely glanced at the staff entrance where she stood, as if determined to edit her out of the frame entirely. Whispers rippled through the crowd as phones buzzed with notifications. Eleanor knew what they were seeing. The first hints that something significant was happening with Chen Holdings. The financial world was starting to stir with anticipation. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined. The officiant's traditional words carried unexpected weight. Eleanor remained silent, her time not yet come. She watched as Victoria's mother dabbed theatrical tears, as the society photographers captured every perfect moment, as her son pledged his life to a world that judged worth by appearances. The ceremony proceeded flawlessly, each moment calculated for maximum social impact. As the newlyweds kissed, Eleanor noted how the photographers carefully angled their shots to exclude the service areas. The staff, her staff, though they didn't know it, remained expertly invisible just as she had been for so many years. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Michael Chen. Applause thundered through the ballroom. Eleanor watched her son's triumphant smile, his arm around his new wife, as they processed down the aisle. Victoria's father was already moving to intercept some important guests, no doubt ready to leverage his new connection to the rising star from Goldman Sachs. As the guests filed out for the reception, Eleanor slipped away to her small office. The leather bag waited where she'd left it, its contents about to shatter the perfect veneer of this carefully orchestrated day. She changed out of her uniform slowly, methodically, remembering all the moments that had led to this one. The wedding program, with its calculated omission of her role, lay on her desk like a challenge. Eleanor picked it up one last time, reading the flowing script that celebrated family connections while trying to erase her existence. Soon, this program would become another artifact in her collection, proof of the world she was about to upend. In the ballroom above, she could hear the reception beginning. The band struck up its first notes, champagne corks popped, and 200 of Manhattan's elite prepared to celebrate a union built on carefully maintained illusions. Eleanor straightened her silk suit, checked the documents in her bag, one final time, and took a deep breath. The time for invisibility was over. The reception hall hummed with privilege and power. Crystal glasses clinked, silk rustled, and the soft murmur of deals being made between dances filled the air. Eleanor stood at the edge of the ballroom, no longer in her uniform, but not yet ready to reveal her transformation. Her designer suit remained hidden beneath a simple coat as she watched the celebration unfold. Phones continued buzzing throughout the room. The financial rumors were spreading faster now. Chen Holdings trended on social media, and speculation about the mysterious owner's identity reached a fever pitch. Eleanor noticed several guests huddled in corners, frantically checking their investment apps. And now, the band leader announced, it's time for the mother-son dance. A subtle ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. Victoria's mother stepped forward, champagne glass in hand. Michael, darling, come dance with me. I know I'm not your mother, but I'd be honored to stand in. Michael smiled, that practiced social smile that Eleanor had watched him perfect over years. Actually, he said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear, my mother is here. She's just busy working. The whispers started immediately. Eleanor felt the weight of curious glances, saw the slight smirks, heard the muffled laughter. But it was Victoria's voice that cut through it all. Oh, Michael, must we keep up this pretense? Everyone knows about your background. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. The help should really stay in the service areas during events like this. It's just proper etiquette. Eleanor stepped forward, her hand touching the microphone she'd taken from the band's stand. This was the moment, but Michael spoke first. You're right, of course, he said, straightening his designer tie. Let's not make things awkward. She's just the maid who helped raise me. Nothing more. The ballroom fell silent. 200 pairs of eyes turned to watch this woman they'd ignored all day, This invisible person suddenly made visible by casual cruelty. Eleanor felt the weight of their stares, their assumptions, their dismissal. She reached into her bag. "Actually," Eleanor said, her voice clear and strong through the microphone, "I believe this dance belongs to me." Her accent, carefully maintained for so many years, smoothed into perfect English. "Mom," Michael hissed, stepping closer. "Don't make a scene. Just go back to the service area." Eleanor removed her coat, revealing the impeccably tailored suit beneath. The fabric alone cost more than a year's salary for the role she'd been playing. The room stirred, confusion rippling through the crowd. "Michael," she said, every word carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom, "for 28 years I've watched you grow. I've cleaned rooms and served coffee, yes, but that was never the whole story." She pulled the first document from her bag, a deed to the Grand Plaza Hotel. "You see, I don't just work here." Her voice remained steady as she held up the paper. "I own this hotel, and not just this one." The buzzing phones around the room seemed to explode in unison. Breaking news alerts flashed across screens. Chen Holdings mystery solved? Anonymous real estate mogul to be revealed? Michael's face drained of color as understanding began to dawn. Victoria's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor like the illusions Eleanor had maintained for so long. Eleanor's voice carried through the stunned silence. "Would you still like to dance, son? Or are you too ashamed to stand beside the woman who owns not just this hotel, but half the buildings your firm's investors wish they could buy?" The microphone in. Her hand felt like a weapon and a shield, amplifying the truth she'd kept silent for decades. Around them, the carefully ordered world of social hierarchy began to crack, reality rewriting itself in real time as Manhattan's elite realized they'd been serving their drinks to one of the city's wealthiest property owners. And still, Eleanor kept her eyes fixed on her son, waiting for his response. The distance between them now measured not in social status, but in understanding. The deed to the Grand Plaza Hotel caught the light as Eleanor held it up, its gold seal gleaming like a spotlight. But it was only the beginning. With measured grace, she withdrew document after document from her leather bag, each one adding another layer to her revelation. "Perhaps you'd all like to see the full picture," Eleanor said, her voice carrying effortlessly now. Years of being ignored had taught her exactly how to command attention. Chen Holdings isn't some mysterious foreign investor or shadowy corporation. It's me. It's always been me. She laid out the documents on a nearby table, creating a paper trail of her secret empire. Investment portfolios showed billions in assets. Property deeds traced her ownership of landmark buildings across Manhattan. Bank statements revealed accounts with more zeros than most of the guests had ever seen. "Mother," Michael's voice cracked on the word. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, son, that while you were learning about market dynamics in business school, I was creating them. While you studied investment strategies, I was implementing them. Every building your firm tried to acquire this year, I own them all." Victoria's father pushed forward through the crowd, his face flushed. "This is impossible. We've been tracking Chen Holdings for years. Our analysts—" "Your analysts," Eleanor interrupted smoothly, "were too busy looking at boardrooms to notice the cleaning. Staff. Tell me, Mr. Blackwell, how many times did you discuss confidential deals while I serviced your office? How many investment strategies did I overhear during late-night meetings?" The room erupted in chaos. Phones flashed as people frantically called their brokers. Eleanor could hear snippets of urgent conversations. "Buy whatever Chen Holdings stock you can find. Get me everything on Eleanor Chen." How did we miss this? Michael stood frozen, staring at the documents that told the true story of his childhood. Every private school tuition payment, every Ivy League fee, every startup investment he'd thought came from scholarships or his own merit, all traced back to his mother's secret accounts. "The company you used as a case study last month," Eleanor continued, her eyes fixed on her son, "the one you called a masterclass in strategic investment, that was me. The mysterious buyer who outmaneuvered your firm on the Madison Avenue deal? Also me." Victoria stepped forward, her wedding dress rustling. "But But you're just a maid? Eleanor smiled. Yes, and that was my choice. My uniform was my best investment tool. Do you know how much people reveal when they think no one is listening? How many deals I closed because everyone assumed the cleaning lady couldn't understand English? She turned to the hotel staff, who stood wide-eyed at the edges of the room. You've all been working for me, not some faceless corporation. Those profit-sharing bonuses, the improved health care, the college funds for your children. I approved. Everyone. Because I know what it means to work hard and be invisible. The title deed to the Grand Plaza seemed to pulse with meaning as it lay among the other documents. Eleanor picked it up again, running her fingers over the embossed letterhead. I bought this hotel 10 years ago, not just because it was profitable, but because it was home. It's where I learned how wealth works in America, where I taught myself, financed by watching the powerful make deals over breakfast. She faced the crowd of Manhattan's elite, these people who had looked through her for decades. You all thought Michael was impressive for rising above his humble beginnings. But where do you think he learned it from? Who do you think showed him the way? The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Even the phones had stopped buzzing, as if technology itself was holding its breath. So yes, Michael. Eleanor's voice softened as she turned back to her son. I am just the maid. I'm also the owner of this hotel, your landlord, your biggest competitor, and your mother. And I've spent 28 years waiting for you to be proud of that fact instead of ashamed. The business empire portfolio lay spread across the table like a royal flush in a high-stakes poker game. But Eleanor's attention remained fixed on her son. Michael stood motionless, his perfectly tailored tuxedo suddenly seeming too tight, too restrictive, as if his carefully constructed world was physically constricting around him. The room's atmosphere had transformed. Where moments ago Eleanor had been invisible, now every eye tracked her movements. Hotel staff who had been her co-workers minutes before stepped back respectfully as she passed, whispering among themselves as years of small kindnesses suddenly made sense. The anonymous college scholarships for their children, the unexpected medical bill coverage, the generous holiday bonuses. I don't understand. Victoria broke the silence, her voice trembling. All those times you cleaned my room, brought me coffee. I did those things, Eleanor said calmly, because work has value, regardless of who performs it. Something I hoped my son would remember. The Blackwells huddled in a corner, frantically scrolling through their phones as the financial news exploded. Headlines flashed across screens throughout the room. Chen Holdings mystery solved, hotel maid revealed as Manhattan real estate mogul, and Wall Street shocked as anonymous billionaire steps forward. Dad, Victoria hissed, tugging at her father's. They do something. But Mr. Blackwell was staring at Eleanor with dawning recognition. The Patterson building merger, he said slowly. Last year, you were emptying the trash when we discussed the deal. You outbid you the next morning, Eleanor finished. Perhaps if you'd bothered to look at me, you might have noticed I was taking notes. The hotel's general manager, who had been Eleanor's nominal boss for 15 years, approached with shaking hands. Mrs. Chen, if I had known, you treated me fairly. Eleanor cut him off kindly. That's all anyone can ask for. Please continue managing my hotel as you always have. A young server dropped a tray of champagne glasses, the crash echoing through the ballroom. Eleanor turned to him with the same gentle efficiency she'd always shown. Carlos, don't worry about that. But please make sure everyone has a full glass. I believe some of our guests need a drink. The familiar interaction seemed to break the spell. Suddenly the room was in motion. People who had ignored Eleanor for years now pressed forward, business cards appearing like magic, faces arranged in practiced smiles. Mrs. Chen, about that property on Fifth Avenue. If you're looking for new investment opportunities, my firm would be honored. Eleanor held up a hand, silencing them all. I've spent 28 years listening to you make deals. Today is my son's wedding. Business can wait. She turned back to Michael, who hadn't moved, whose eyes remained fixed on the portfolio that proved his mother was not just wealthy, but a financial genius. His hands trembled as he picked up a recent acquisition report, a property his own firm had tried unsuccessfully to purchase. The Chen Holdings analyst. "We could never reach," he whispered. "The one who always seemed 3 steps ahead of everyone else. That was you?" "I learned from the best," Eleanor replied softly. "I just had a different classroom than you did. Mine was in the service corridors and behind cleaning carts, but the lessons were the same." Victoria's mother, who had spent months treating Eleanor like furniture, now stood awkwardly between her daughter and this woman who could buy and sell her family several times over. The social hierarchy had turned upside down, and no one quite knew how to proceed. The business empire portfolio continued to command attention, its contents rewriting everyone's understanding of power and success. But it was the small details that seemed to hit hardest. The realization that Eleanor had served coffee at board meetings where her own properties were being discussed, had emptied trash bins full of failed strategies to acquire her buildings, had quietly built an empire while everyone looked through her. In the hotel owner's private office, her office, though she'd never used it until now, Eleanor faced her son across a mahogany desk. Michael's college diploma hung on the wall behind her, every penny of its astronomical cost documented in the receipts she'd laid out between them. Each payment traced back to her accounts, each achievement quietly funded by the mother he'd been so eager to erase. "Why?" Michael's voice cracked. "Why live like that? Why make me think that you were poor?" Eleanor's voice remained gentle. "We were never poor, Michael. Not from the day you were born. I chose to keep working, to maintain my role here, because it was useful. Because being invisible made people careless with their secrets. But all those years of pretending, of letting people think..." He gestured helplessly at the receipts. "My whole life has been a lie." "No," Eleanor leaned forward. "Your whole life has been a gift. I gave you the chance to build your own identity, to succeed on your own terms. Everything you achieved at Goldman Sachs, every deal you closed, that was all you." "Was it?" Michael picked up a receipt from his first year at Yale. "How can I know what I actually earned and what you secretly arranged? Did you buy my job too?" "I never interfered with your career." Eleanor's voice sharpened. "Slightly, though I could have. Do you know how many times I outbid your firm this past year? How many deals I won against you? I let you compete against me without ever knowing it, because I respected your right to build your own success." Michael slumped. In his chair, his wedding day finery suddenly seeming like a costume. "I told everyone you were just a maid. I made you serve drinks at my engagement party. I let Victoria's family treat you like I was beneath them?" Eleanor finished. "Yes, you did. And that hurt more than any physical labor I've ever done. Not because they looked down on me. I never cared about their opinion. But because you were ashamed of me." She opened a drawer and withdrew an old photograph, the same one she'd looked at that morning. Baby Michael in her arms, both of them smiling, her uniform crisp and neat even then. "I kept this all these years remembering. The time when you were proud to be my son. Before status and society taught you to be ashamed of honest work." "I didn't understand," Michael whispered, taking the photo with trembling hands. "All those lessons about investment strategies, about market analysis, I thought you were just repeating things you'd overheard. I never imagined that the cleaning lady could be smarter than the executives she served." Eleanor's smile held a lifetime of secret triumph. "Your father thought the same thing, before he abandoned us. He never suspected that his pregnant girlfriend was building an empire, right under his nose." Michael's head snapped up. "Father, you told me he died before I was born." "Another protection," Eleanor admitted. "Better a dead father than one who walked away because he thought we'd be a burden. He lives in Connecticut now, still trying to get his hedge fund off the ground. Sometimes he stays in this hotel, never recognizing the maid he left behind is now his landlord." The weight of revealed truth seemed to press Michael deeper into his chair. Outside the office, they could hear the reception continuing, music and laughter muffled by thick walls. His new wife, his in-laws, his carefully cultivated social circle, all of them reeling from the revelation that the woman they'd dismissed was actually the power broker they'd been trying to reach for years. "I don't know who I am anymore," Michael said finally. "Everything I thought I knew about my life, about you." Eleanor reached across the desk and took his hand, her fingers still bearing the subtle calluses of decades of manual labor. "You're my son. Everything else, the money, the properties, the social status, that's just window dressing. I never needed you to be proud of my success. I just needed you to be proud that I was your mother." Security footage from the Grand Plaza's cameras played silently on the office monitors, showing the reception hall in elegant black and white. Eleanor watched the screens with Michael, witnessing the ripples of their private conversation spread. Through the celebration below, 28 years of service had taught her to read a room's mood, even through surveillance feeds. The footage showed clusters of guests huddled over phones, their faces illuminated by screens displaying real-time stock updates. Chen Holdings' value had skyrocketed since her revelation. Others gathered around the hotel staff, who were suddenly elevated from invisible to invaluable, potential sources of information about the billionaire who had worked alongside them. "Look." Eleanor pointed to one screen showing the kitchen area. "Watch Maria. She's worked here as long as I have." The footage showed Maria, a veteran server, surrounded by eager guests who had never glanced at her before. She stood tall, a proud smile on her face as she explained something to her rapt audience. "She's telling them about the time I helped pay for her daughter's medical school," Eleanor explained. Though until today, they thought that scholarship came from the hotel's corporate fund. Michael watched the scenes unfold, his own image appearing occasionally in the footage as he moved through the crowd earlier, ignorant of his mother's true identity. "You helped all of them?" "I helped where I could," Eleanor said simply. A mother's instinct doesn't stop with her own child. The security feed switched to show Victoria and her parents in an intense discussion with their financial advisor, who had been summoned from a Saturday golf game. Their gestures were animated, faces cycling through confusion, calculation, and forced civility. "Your new in-laws are trying to decide whether to be angry about the deception or excited about the connection to Chen Holdings," Eleanor observed, dryly. "Watch their advisor. See how he keeps pointing at his tablet? He's showing them exactly how much money I control." In another frame, the hotel's general manager could be seen giving impromptu tours of the property, gesturing at architectural features and artwork that Eleanor had personally selected, though he hadn't known it at the time. The cameras caught his occasional glances toward her office, decades of assumptions visibly rewriting themselves across his face. "I've seen enough," Michael said, turning away from the monitors. "I can't watch them all, recalibrating like this. It's so transparent." "Welcome to my world," Eleanor replied. "I've watched people adjust their behavior based on perceived wealth and status for years. The only difference is now they're scrambling to adjust upward instead of down." A new commotion on the screens drew their attention. The footage showed hotel employees bringing out their phones, displaying years of photos and videos they'd taken with Eleanor, birthday celebrations in the break room, holiday parties, quiet moments during slow shifts. Their genuine affection shone through even in the grainy security footage. "You let them take pictures with you," Michael noted, his voice tight. "I haven't taken a photo with you since high school." "They weren't ashamed to be seen with me," Eleanor said quietly. "And now they're proud to show they knew me before I was somebody in society's eyes." The security footage had become an unintentional documentary of social hierarchy in flux. Wealthy guests who had walked past Eleanor for years now stumbled over themselves trying to catch her attention through the office door. Victoria's society friends huddled in corners, furiously rewriting social media posts that had mocked the help at the wedding. Even the wedding photographer had shifted focus, now capturing candid shots of the hotel staff who had worked alongside Manhattan's most enigmatic billionaire. 28 years of evidence, Eleanor mused, watching the footage. Every security tape in this hotel's archives shows me building an empire in plain sight. I attended board meetings as serving staff, cleaned the offices where my competitors planned strategies against me, poured coffee for analysts trying to uncover my identity. The Irony played out across the multiple screens. The invisible woman had been the most documented all along. Every camera in the building had captured her story, even if no one had thought to look until now. An old photo album lay open between Eleanor and Michael in the office, its pages documenting the gradual distance that had grown between them. The early photos showed a proud little boy clinging to his mother's hand, unconcerned by her uniform or status. With each turning page, the physical space between them in photos grew larger, until Eleanor disappeared from the frames altogether. "I remember this day," Michael said softly, touching a photograph from his 10th birthday. Eleanor stood slightly apart from the party, caught in the background while serving cake to his friends. "I told everyone you were the party hostess from the hotel, not my mother." "Yes," Eleanor replied. "That was the first time you denied me in public." Victoria's gentle knock interrupted them. She stood in the doorway, her wedding dress slightly wrinkled, her perfect composure finally cracked. May I come in?" Eleanor gestured to a chair. Her daughter-in-law moved cautiously into the office, her eyes drawn to the photo album. "All this time," Victoria said, "I thought I was helping Michael rise above his circumstances. I never imagined—" She trailed off, looking at a photo of young Michael proudly showing Eleanor his first-grade report card. "That he had already risen?" Eleanor finished. "Or that his circumstances were not what they seemed?" "I treated you like a servant," Victoria whispered. "Worse than a servant. I gave you orders about your own hotel, criticized how you arranged flowers in your own building. You treated me exactly as I allowed you to," Eleanor corrected. "Every slight, every dismissal, they were all tools in my hands. Your family's confidence that I was beneath notice let me stay 3 steps ahead of your father's investment strategies." Michael leaned forward. "About that, how many times did you outmaneuver Victoria's father?" A small smile played at Eleanor's lips. "The Kingston Plaza development, that was me. The waterfront renovation project, also me. Every major property deal he lost in the past 5 years was to Chen Holdings." Victoria's eyes widened. "Dad always said his mysterious competitor must be a financial genius with unprecedented market insight." "No," Eleanor shook her head. "Just a woman who learned that people speak freely in front of those they think don't matter." She turned another page in the photo album, revealing a gap of several years. The period when Michael had refused to be photographed with her at all. "Status is a curious thing," she mused. "People assume it comes from what you own, what you wear, how you speak. They forget that true power often comes from being underestimated." Michael touched one of the empty spaces where a mother-son photo should have been. "I spent so long trying to prove I was more than just a maid's son. This time I was actually less than what you truly were." "No," Eleanor's voice grew firm. "You are exactly what I wanted you to be, successful on your own terms. Everything you achieved at Goldman Sachs, every deal you closed, every client you impressed, that was all you. I never used my influence to help or hinder your career." Victoria studied the photos, seeing them with new eyes. "You gave up being recognized as what you are? To protect him?" "I gave up nothing," Eleanor corrected. "I chose every step of my path. The uniform, the role, the perceived status. They were all strategic decisions that helped build what I have now." She closed the photo album gently, her hands lingering on its worn cover. "The question is not why I hid my success, but why it needed to be hidden at all. Why my son felt he could only be proud of me if I matched society's definition of achievement, the Kai." Weight of those words hung in the air. Through the office window, they could see the reception continuing below, the social elite of Manhattan still reeling from their revised understanding of power and worth. "Can we—" Michael hesitated. "Can we take a new photo, the 3 of us? A real one this time?" Eleanor smiled, her first genuine smile of the day. "I'd like that. But first, I believe you owe some apologies to the hotel staff who have been covering for you all day. They've kept my secret for years out of loyalty, not obligation." The photographer captured the moment perfectly. Eleanor Chen standing center stage in the Grand Plaza ballroom, her son at her side, his arm around her shoulders for the first time in decades. The new family portrait would soon replace the countless society photos where she had been cropped out or dismissed to the background. "May I have everyone's attention?" Michael's voice carried across the reception hall, slightly shaky but growing stronger. The crowd quieted immediately, drawn by the drama unfolding before them. "I need to correct some things I said earlier." Eleanor stood tall beside him, her designer suit a stark contrast to the uniform she'd worn for so many years. The hotel staff had arranged themselves near the stage, a quiet show of support for the woman who had been their secret benefactor. "For years," Michael continued, "I've told a story about rising from humble beginnings through my own hard work and determination. That story was a lie. Not because I didn't work hard, but because I failed to acknowledge the extraordinary woman who made it all possible." He turned to face Eleanor directly. "My mother didn't just support my dreams. She funded them, guided them, shaped them, all while building an empire that dwarfs anything I've achieved. And I repaid her sacrifices with shame and denial." Victoria stepped forward to join them, her white dress symbolic of new beginnings. "I too owe Mrs. Chen an apology. I mistook humility for humiliation, never questioning why someone of her obvious intelligence and dignity would choose to serve others." The new family portrait captured this moment of transition. Michael's protective stance beside his mother, Victoria's genuine contrition, Eleanor's quiet dignity. The photographer's flash caught the tears in Michael's eyes as he continued. "The true story isn't about a boy rising above his mother's station. It's about a son who never realized he was standing in the shadow of greatness. Every success I've celebrated, every deal I've closed, every strategy I've employed, I learned it all from watching you, Mom, even when I was too blind to see it." Eleanor reached up and squeezed his hand, years of hurt beginning to heal in that simple gesture. The hotel staff broke into applause first, their genuine affection for Eleanor spreading through the room until even the Blackwells found themselves joining in. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael addressed the crowd, his voice stronger now, "I'd like to properly introduce you to Eleanor Chen, my mother and the founder of Chen Holdings. Not just the owner of this hotel, but the visionary investor your firms have been trying to partner with for years. The business genius you've all been attempting to track down while she served you coffee and listened to your strategies." The new family portrait caught this too, the pride finally visible in Michael's stance, the subtle smile on Eleanor's face, the way Victoria held herself as if understanding for the first time what true dignity looked like. "Mom?" Michael turned. Back to Eleanor. "Would you do me the honor of a dance? Not because tradition demands it, but because I've waited far too long to be proud of being your son." As they moved onto the dance floor, the whispers around the room shifted from shock to appreciation. The hotel staff watched with tears in their eyes as their longtime colleague finally received the recognition she deserved. The society photographers who had once cropped Eleanor out of photos now fought for the best angles to capture this moment of reconciliation. The new family portrait would hang in the hotel's lobby by morning, replacing years of carefully curated images that had hidden the truth. In it, Eleanor stood not as a servant, but as a mother, a businesswoman, a force that had shaped Manhattan's skyline while remaining invisible. And beside her, Michael stood not as someone who had risen above his beginnings, but as someone finally understanding where his true legacy began. As the wedding reception drew to a close, Eleanor stood by the grand windows of her hotel, a crystal glass of champagne in one hand and the key to her executive office in the other. The small brass key, never used until today, caught the light of the chandeliers, a final symbol of her transformation from invisible to acknowledged. The ballroom had taken on a different energy now. Hotel staff moved through the crowd with newfound confidence, sharing stories about their years working alongside Manhattan's most enigmatic billionaire. The social elite who had dismissed them all evening now listened intently, hoping to glean insights into the woman who had outmaneuvered them for decades. "Tell them about the time Mrs. Chen paid for your son's surgery," one maid said to another, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Or how she set up college funds for all our kids." Eleanor smiled. remembering each act of quiet generosity. She had never needed recognition for her kindness, just as she had never needed acknowledgement of her success. Power, she had learned, was most effective when wielded softly. Michael approached her, his bow tie loosened, Victoria by his side. The young couple looked different now, humbled, but somehow more genuine than they had appeared at the ceremonies. "Start, Mom," Michael said, testing the word as if discovering its true meaning for the first time. "The car's ready to take us to the airport, but we wanted—" "What your son is trying to say," Victoria stepped in, her earlier condescension replaced by genuine respect, "is that we'd like to postpone our honeymoon. There's so much to learn, so much history to understand. If you're willing to share it." Eleanor turned the office key over in her hand. 28 years of stories," she said softly. "Are you sure you want to hear them all?" "Every single one," Michael answered firmly. "No more hiding, no more shame. I want to know everything. How you built your empire, how you made your decisions, how you stayed so strong while I was so weak." "Not weak," Eleanor corrected him. "Just young. And perhaps now, finally ready to learn." The last dance was announced, and the band began to play a gentle melody. Without hesitation, Michael extended his hand to his mother. As they moved across the dance floor, Eleanor caught glimpses of their reflection in the ballroom's mirrors. No longer the maid and her embarrassed son, but a family finding its way back to truth. "You know," Michael said as they danced, "all those investment strategies I was so proud of mastering? I realize now I was just recreating patterns you'd already perfected years ago." Eleanor laughed softly. "Was it the Morrison deal that gave it away? Or the downtown development project?" "Both," he admitted. "Chen Holdings' moves always seemed familiar, but I never understood why. I was studying your playbook without knowing it was yours." As the music faded, Eleanor looked around her hotel, at the staff who had kept her secret, at the society figures who had underestimated her, at her son who was finally seeing her clearly. The office key felt warm in her hand, a reminder that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new conversations, new understanding. Victoria joined them as the band played their final notes. "The photographers want one last photo," she said. "The three of us in front of the hotel entrance. They're calling it the real Chen dynasty." Eleanor smiled, remembering all the times she had stepped aside to avoid being photographed with her son. "A dynasty built on room keys and service elevators," she mused. "Not quite the usual story." "No," Michael agreed, taking her arm. "It's better. It's true." As they walked toward the hotel entrance, Eleanor passed her old cleaning cart, still stationed discreetly in the service alcove. She ran her fingers along its handle one last time. Not in farewell, but in gratitude. Every role she had played, every position she had accepted, had been a choice. And now, finally, it was time for a new one. The office key would open more than just a door tomorrow. It would open decades of stories, of wisdom, of lessons learned in the shadows of power. But tonight, as the photographers positioned her between her son and his bride, Eleanor simply smiled, knowing that the greatest success of her empire wasn't measured in properties or profits, but in the truth finally set free.